Hello, please like and subscribe. I am delighted to be joined by Jamie Driscoll, who is currently the mayor of the North of Tyne. He was, of course, the Labour mayor. What I would say a huge amount of praise from actually across the political spectrum for what he's achieved in that mayoralty. Some would have thought then that at the very least, with the new North East Combined Authority being created, the Labour Party would at least shortlist the guy so that Labour members could vote on him for that particular post. Not to be, unfortunately. So, Jamie, let's firstly, hi. What's happened since is having been barred from standing, so Labour members have had their democratic rights usurped. They weren't allowed to say whether they wanted you to be the candidate for the North East Mayoralty. You've now resigned from the Labour Party. You've set up a fundraiser, a GoFundMe to raise money for it. Your initial target was 25,000. You said if you get that by the end of August, then you would stand, but if not, you wouldn't. You managed that in 2 hours, and now you're on nearly 88,000, which by the time this video is out of date will be this video goes up will be out of date. What does that? Firstly, what's your response to that, just in terms of how much you've raised and what that tells you?
It's really, politicians say this, but genuinely, it's really quite humbling. I'm quite surprised. When Labour first barred me, and everybody knows that was just a total sham. They don't do due diligence on right-wing candidates. We know that. The response immediately was one of outrage from Labour members. And it's notable that Labour have not published the number of votes in that election, by the way, because I think the turnout will be really low, because I know the majority of Labour members are now going to vote for me as an independent. They've told me. So we got in that situation. What are we going to do? And it was a conversation with my family. When my youngest son, he's 15, he said, look, Dad, you're going to be fighting for the climate emergency. You're going to be fighting for better jobs for people. He says, why not fight for the position where you can actually do something about it? And I thought he was right. We're at Beer Festival on I live in Newcastle, just around the corner, local church hall. People coming up to me, and I don't know who they are, shaking my hand and saying, I hope you run as an independent. I've had Tory councillors have said, I hope you run as an independent, I'll vote for you. Labour councillors, Lib Dems, all of them. And so when everybody's saying you should run as an independent, then, well, you've got to listen. Not everyone, wants to do it, but I'm the one who created this devolution deal for this new authority, spent years negotiating. We're talking about working cross-party. I managed to persuade Michael Gove and Simon Clarke and Grant Shapps to give us more money than any other part of England. So I'm not going to do a David Cameron and walk away and say, I've created this thing, I want nothing to do with it. So, it's about getting the best transport system. I want that back in public ownership. I know I can do it. I know we can get the numbers of people up using it to the point where we can fund free travel for under 18s. That's great for dealing with child poverty. It's great for the climate emergency. So it really is about the practical things in the North East. And the idea of putting out a fundraiser, going up against big party machines with their slick press offices, that requires resources. And we thought, right, it's going to be about 150 grand to run the campaign, we reckon, to run a good campaign. So if we can raise 25 by the end of August, we'll probably be on target. Smash that in 2 hours. And as you're saying, it's on 80-odd thousand now. And I've had some other donors say, I want to donate a large amount of money, but I don't want to pay the commission on these things. Can I do that? So I think there'll be a little bit more coming in. We're going to win.
Just before I come on to that, so because I want to ask you about that and your plans, genuinely, and your record. But the Labour Party didn't actually say why they barred you, but it's been suggested that was because you did a sit-down event with Ken Loach, who is one of Britain's most celebrated filmmakers, it should be said. So the BBC in the North East lauded him recently after his film, which is based in the North East, which is obviously the region that you're running for. But what's your take on the reasons for why they barred you? What was going on, and was there any sense beforehand they were going to do this?
Yeah, I did do an event with Ken Loach. So the Live Theatre is a great community arts venue in Newcastle. It was his 50th birthday celebrations. They said, look, Ken Loach, can we do an event with him where you're talking about film and the region? I said, yeah, I'd love to. His last 3 feature films have been set here. I, Daniel Blake, Sorry We Missed You. And the latest one, The Old Oak, which comes out in September. So that's what we talked about, and life in general, and football, and basically two old blokes chewing the fat. And then the Labour Party have briefed saying, "Oh well, you can't do that." Now I find that very bizarre, because Keir Starmer was in a Ken Loach film. He was in McLibel. And you might say, "Oh yeah, but that was a long time ago." But he used clips of that in his 2020 election campaign video. And nobody's asked him to apologise. And this is out there, and people know he's done it. So why haven't JLM asked him to apologise for that if they think there's something wrong? I don't think there's anything wrong in talking to Ken Loach. Now, he's refuted the accusations against him, and we've got to take his word for that. I don't think Ken Loach is anti-Semitic. I think he has strong views in Israel, and a lot of people might not agree with him, and that's fine. That's fair debate. Ed Miliband recently, in the last couple of years, invited Ken Loach onto his Cheerful podcast to talk about, well, guess what? Films. So there's a massive, hypocrisy there, isn't there? So it only seems to be people who support the policies that Keir Starmer was elected on who get accused of doing anything. Whereas the actual guy who stood on those policies, who's used his association with Ken Loach for electoral benefit, well, that's fine.
So basically, when they brief or tell you you're not on the short list or long list even, the gist is, we don't think you're good enough. Based on your record as mayor, how would you refute the idea that you're not of whatever the quality that is needed as a Labour candidate based on this?
That is interesting, that one, isn't it? So they initially said, "Oh, it's because you spoke to Ken Loach, and we can't have that." And then I refuted that, and they said, "Okay, you didn't meet the standard required to be a mayor." I am a mayor, yes, and I've created thousands of jobs, good jobs, backed by our good work pledge. I've got a target from government for how many I'm supposed to create, and in 4 years, I've created 15 years worth of jobs. In terms of training people so they get better skills, everyone talks about the skills gap and labour shortages. We've increased that from 22,000 a year to 33,000 a year on the same budget. I mean, that's pretty good value for money. That speaks to economic competence. But what we've done, and as socialists, what we really care about is what difference that's made. And 45% of the people who get these courses are from minority ethnic backgrounds. 56% are women. Which is reversing the trend, which usually women do less adult education than men. 21% I'd self-identify as either neurodiverse or disabled. So that's not talking about equalities. That's actually making it happen in people's lives. And we've managed to do that because we've cut out big outsourcing companies and consultants. We work directly with the training providers. We do it in communities. And we make free, flexible courses available so that people can work around their work commitments or their caring commitments. I mean, that's the sort of thing that you would expect a Labour government to be shouting from the rooftops. This is economic competence and social justice at the same time. I've shown it can be done. And maybe that's the reason they got rid of me. Who knows?
Does it hurt to stand against the Labour Party?
I don't know. I'm a fairly rational guy. You just got to take it. The slings and arrows of outrageous politics is what you deal with. I joined the Labour Party in 1985 as a teenager, and I can't say this now. My brother isn't a member anymore because he resigned yesterday. My two teenage sons, my mum, my wife. So, very strong Labour background, and I was regional chair of the Young Socialists back in the 80s. So I've done just about every job you can in the Labour Party. And for them to say, you've done everything right, you've created thousands of jobs, you've shown economic competence, you've been hugely successful in bringing diversity, that's not good enough. We're going to parachute someone in. It gets to the point where it's Kafkaesque. So you can't even get angry or hurt about it. You just got to say, look, there is no rationality, there is no logic involved in anything they're doing. And I think, you hear them banging on at the moment about, we've got to win an election, economic competence. Of course you've got to win an election. Who disagrees with that? But that doesn't explain why you sit down with Google and then 3 days later reverse the policy on taxing big tech companies, handing back £3 million from your plan when you say we need all the money we can get. Where's the votes in giving tax breaks to big tech companies? Even the owners of big tech companies don't like each other.
Some would say, though, look, you might be upset, you might be angry about what's happened, but the Tories now put forward a first past the post electoral system for the mayoralty. So it's not, you didn't get to rank candidates. It's not proportional representation either. And then if you got you standing and a Labour candidate standing, the Tory will come through the middle. What would you say about that?
Well, first things first, if that was a worry, don't block successful candidates who have a massive following. You know, on them is where this lies. But I don't think that's true. If you talk about the Tory vote, there isn't a Tory vote in the North East anymore. That was, in 2019 in particular, that was very much a, we are unhappy because the Labour Party promised that they would honour the referendum, and they haven't. So that was a huge part of that. And in 21, when Durham lost Labour for the first time ever, the tribal loyalties have broken down. So we can't assume they're going back to Labour. I think they will vote for a strong regional voice, someone like me, someone who's a strong believer in progressive patriotism. You know, you can see my flags behind. There's a pride flag right next to the Union flag and the Northumberland flag. And my dad drove a tank in the army. My brother served in the Navy when the Falklands was on. And I'm not, you know, I'm an engineer by profession. I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I'm not the sort of sandal-wearing Islington type of person that puts perhaps a lot of people off in the Northeast. You know, I am the red wall voter. You know, I left school at 16. So I think from that side of things, then all the tactical votes are going to come to me. So I really don't think this is going to happen. I think there's going to be more Labour members will vote for me than will vote for the Labour candidate.
A couple other things. This week, Keir Starmer announced that Labour would be keeping the 2-child benefit limit, which the Tories introduced, George Osborne introduced originally, which has plunged 250,000 children into poverty and another 800,000 further into poverty. It would cost an estimated 1.3 billion or so to reverse, which is about 0.1% of total government expenditure. But Labour said that there isn't enough money to do that. What do you think about that? And what do you think that says about where the Labour Party is now headed under Keir Starmer, bearing in mind what he promised when he stood for the leader in 2020?
Yeah, there's a few points in that, isn't there? I mean, first of all, if you keep breaking your promises and talk about electability at the same time, well, there's a cognitive dissonance reduction going on there, because breaking your promises is going to make you less likely to be elected. People remember, they really do. When we're talking about keeping children in poverty, that is extraordinarily expensive. You can't say we're going to remove sticking plaster politics and say we're only thinking about the short term. Having kids growing up with ill health, with shortening life expectancy and healthy life expectancy, which is what's happening, with poor educational outcomes, is not compatible with a successful economy and a high productive economy. And that, every economist will tell you that. So it makes no economic sense to do that. To say, well, we can't afford 1.3 billion to stop kids in poverty. I was talking to someone who used to work in the Blair Policy Unit in the 90s, who told me they're outraged by this as well. You know, this is not Blairism. This is like neo-Blairism. It's gone way beyond that. And they said the Labour Party is a moral movement or it is nothing. So it doesn't work economically. It doesn't work on any level of morality. And it's not got any electoral sense behind it either if you're going to keep breaking your promises. What you do is you take on the argument and you win.
Reasonable, but perhaps not in the modern Labour Party under Keir Starmer. Unfortunately, they're one-on-one breakfast with very rich Tory donors. Thumbs up. Children out of poverty, not so much. Finally, then, very quickly, if you're going to do a very quick elevator pitch, why I, Jamie Driscoll, now the independent candidate for the North East Mayoralty, should be the winner, the victor, what would it be, succinctly?
It would be, I'm going to deliver a total transport network that integrates buses, metro, heavy rail, car clubs and bike hire into a single transport system that'll get you where you want to go, that'll be safe. We'll have guards on the trains, we'll have free transport for under 18s. Well, you know, that's pretty good. I'm going to create a job for everyone who wants one and make sure the training courses are there so that people who've got difficult places in their lives, they have a future to earn decent money. I'm going to continue to tackle the climate emergency. And the reason you know I'll deliver that is because I've already started doing it. I've got a track record that's second to none in terms of delivery. And as a strong independent voice, I'm not going to be a puppet of Westminster. I'll put the North East first.
Bam! Quite a pitch there for people to think over. Well, have to say, Jamie, who knows now? I mean, by the time this video's up, what the fundraiser will be up to. I think it does speak to the fact there's a very large constituency of people in this country who haven't bought into the new consensus, which exists between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer. And I know a lot of Labour members, both current and former, and Labour supporters, who are looking very carefully at what happens in the North East and thinking very carefully about what happens next politically. Labour likely to win the next election, but if they carry on governing as they've set out, who knows what that will mean politically and what openings will happen. So I'll be watching very carefully what happens, and I'm sure lots of other people will as well. So thanks so much for joining us, Jamie. Really, really appreciate your time, and I'm sure we will speak soon.
Cheers, Aaron.